I remember being in his office and he took my AMH levels and he was like, you know, your AMH levels are more like a Toyota, but you should be like a Ferrari at your age. And I remember being like, that's amazing. Like, I've gotten cancer diagnosis and now you're telling me I'm a Toyota. He was wrong. He was very wrong. I got a whole bunch of eggs.
Hello, everyone. I am so pumped to chat today with Rijon, who is an attorney in California who specializes in family formation. And we are going to talk today about her own fertility journey and kind of how she got into this type of law. So please introduce yourself.
Hi, I am so honored to be here with you today, Genevieve. As Genevieve said, I am Rijon Charne, and I have my solo firm that specializes in anything to do with assisted reproduction law, as well as estate planning, to make sure that everything is all rounded and it's not just focusing on one single issue.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we, offer at Connecting Rainbows is the, start, grow, and protect your family kind of, aspect. So we cover all of those pieces, which I love.
Yeah.
All right. So I know a little bit of your story. And so we're going to take us back to law school. So you're already in law school and you had dreams of becoming a litigator and, being a partner in a fancy office. So tell us what happened.
Yeah, so I took my final exam of law school on Monday. Couldn't wait to be done, couldn't wait to graduate. But I wasn't feeling well, so I just assumed it was the stress from final law school exams. But I ended up going to the healthcare center on campus, and a wonderful doctor looked at me and looked me over, and she examined me like this, which has never happened before to me, and she found a lump right here in my neck. At first she was like, we really need to get you to an ENT. And I told her, oh no, absolutely not, this is probably a strange joint from studying too much or from working out. Like, there's no lump yet, like we're fine. She's like, actually, we can't let you leave the office until you make an appointment with an ENT. So I made an appointment with the ENT. And thanks for her complete and total insistence. She's the reason why I am here today.
Wow. So you saw the ENT.
So I saw the ENT on Wednesday. He wanted to give me the results on Friday. He told me it could be a combination of things. And I told him absolutely not. I did not want to get any results before graduation. I'd waited 3 years to get done with law school, and not even a cancer diagnosis was going to take that away from me if it was. And so graduated, had the best time. And then Monday morning, I received the call that I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. Yeah.
So here you are in your early 20s, mid 20s, whatever 20s.
Yeah.
Getting this diagnosis, and all of your friends are studying for the bar exam. Mm-hmm. And now suddenly you're fighting for your life.
Exactly. Yep. My dreams of, or my fears, I guess you could say, of, oh my gosh, am I going to pass the bar? How am I going to do this? Turned into, how am I going to freeze my eggs? How am I going to afford that? How and what chemo is right for me? And where am I going to have radiation? And do I need radiation? And, am I going to survive? And what are the survival rates? And that was what my stresses became. And all of a sudden, life really just gets put into perspective for you much quicker than you would ever want it to, in a way you would never want it to. But you really start to evaluate what's important and what's not.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So did somebody speak to you about freezing your eggs, or, was this, you just kind of knew that that's something that you should consider before treatment? Like, how did that come about?
Actually, it did not come about. I actually got blown off quite a few times when I asked. So the first oncologist I went to see, I will never forget, I'm sitting in his office. It was the day I had gotten diagnosed, and I walk in there and I have a lot of hair, and he looks at me and he was like, yeah, we're going to be doing this, this, and this. You see that beautiful head of hair of yours? That's going to go. I'm just like that. And I was like, okay. And
A little too
like,
blunt.
oh, just a little bit, just no bad amount of that's okay. And I looked at him and I was like, well, what, like, how does this affect my fertility? Like, what are my chances? And he's like, your kind of chemo is like 20%, it's really not that big of a deal. And I really don't think it's worth the time or the money. And I was like, okay. And when you're getting like bombarded with, these different chemos and what you're going to do, and, oh, we're about to turn you over to do a bone marrow, biopsy. And you're like, 20% doesn't sound like a lot. Like, okay, whatever you say. And a few days later, after I was processing everything, I was like, wait 1 second. That's like 1 in 5 people. Like, I don't want to be that 1 in 5 person that I know I could have prevented it. Right. But here I am with, no family of my own, solely because I listened to him telling me it was not important. So needless to say, I left him and I went to MD Anderson, which is the top cancer hospital in the world. And lucky for me, they have an incredible reproductive endocrinologist. Her name is Dr. Terry Whitted. She is the reason why I am a fertility attorney today. And they actually have fertility preservation as part of their treatment plan. They find it to be as important as your chemo plan and your radiation plan. So you literally see an oncologist, you see a radiation oncologist, and you see a reproductive endocrinologist, right? And you have to see it. And then if you want to do it, that's up to you, but it's part of their treatment plan.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. And, I got told it was going to be $15,000. And I was like, where am I supposed to get that? I just graduated. I don't have that. Should I just take out more student loans? Like, what do I do? And she told me something that nobody else has told me then nor since. And she said to me, look, your chances are very low in terms of not being able to have your own children from this chemo. But the problem is that if you relapse, right, then you won't have time for your eggs to heal, for you to do the retrieval, and then for you to do it. Because if you relapse, you have to go through stem cells and all the stuff, and you will be at that point pretty much 100% infertile. So when I heard that, I was like, wait, what? Like, how does this work? So I Googled everything that I could, and I landed up working with organizations that were able to cover my medication costs and some of my ultrasounds and all this stuff. And so I landed up paying $2,000 out of pocket, which is still too much because it is a side effect of cancer and it's something that should be covered by insurance. But it was a lot better than 15,000.
Yeah.
So
wow, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. So you going through all of this, you're dealing with now this diagnosis and the need to get your eggs out quickly so that you can start chemo quickly.
Correct.
And I remember you told me the kind of realization of when you were like, I need to do this type of law. So let's share that with everyone. Yeah.
So my journey, because the team that I was with was so amazing. Like I always tell my clients, you have to find a team you trust and you love. Like I had seen another reproductive endocrinologist before Dr. Woodard, because I didn't want to be in Houston for the 3 weeks to freeze my eggs and all of that stuff. And I went to see somebody in Dallas, which is where I was living at the time. My parents are. And I mean, I remember being in his office and he took my AMH levels and he was like, your AMH levels are more like a Toyota, but you should be like a Ferrari at your age. And I remember being like, that's amazing. Like I've gotten cancer diagnosis and now you're telling me I'm a Toyota, right? Like at this point, like what's the point of living? I mean, right? Should we just give up? He was wrong. He was very wrong. I got a whole bunch of eggs. So, when people are talking about the AMH levels, like sometimes that is not a very accurate representation. But as I was going through the journey with Dr. Woodard and her team at MD Anderson, it was just so amazing. I loved watching my follicles grow with the eggs. And I loved seeing the amount of eggs that I got every day. And I was just so lucky that we were in this time of day and age where this was an opportunity for me versus before where I would have just kind of had to roll my dice and seen what I got. And so she finishes the retrieval. Of course, I come out, not in my full mind after anesthesia. And I'm sitting there crying my eyes out on the recovery table. And my mom and Dr. Woodard are there. And I was like, this was amazing. I'm going to get into this area of law and I'm going to do whatever I can to get people covered. And this is what I'm going to do. And thank you. And I remember they both looked at me and they were like, calm down, calm down. Like, don't tell me to calm down. This is what I'm going to do. And here I am. So it was, they always laugh and it's always a story between us, but clearly I was not as high as they thought on the recovery table, because
a little bit,
I am. Just that, the tears for sure, but
I love it.
Yeah.
So then from there you were like, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing this type of law, and then found your way to a firm in California.
Yes, I did. I found my way into a firm in California. A lot of people in this industry are solo practitioners, so it was actually pretty hard to find a job in this area. And so I landed up working with another firm that's on a bit larger scale. And so I got a job with them, and it was an amazing opportunity, and I loved every minute of it. And then I left and started my own firm. And a huge reason for that was because one of the main things I really wanted to focus on was getting cancer or fertility preservation covered for cancer patients. So I am, an advisor now to the group called the Alliance for Fertility Preservation, and they are amazing, and they really work every day to get fertility preservation covered for cancer patients. And actually, 4 years after I was on that recovery table, 5 years now, wow, 5 years now after I was on that recovery table, I was actually in the Texas House of Representatives, testifying on behalf of House Bill 293, which is to get fertility preservation covered for cancer patients in Texas, which means that insurance companies will have to acknowledge and pay for any sort of fertility preservation treatments, whether that's egg freezing, embryo freezing, and then eventually IVF for cancer patients who are undergoing treatment, because it is a side effect of that cancer treatment. So
it's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Have we heard anything yet?
Yeah, so it actually got passed from a committee now into the main House of Representatives. So if anybody is from Texas, feel free to reach out to me and I will tell you how to, push the bill. So we should be hearing pretty soon from the House of Representatives if it's going to go to the Senate. And then if it goes to the Senate, we'll go and testify again. And then we have the final decision. So fingers crossed. Yeah.
Well, I just saw that there was it, I don't know if it was just a proposal of but federally having fertility coverage covered. So that's the House of Representatives now. Federally, I think.
Yes.
Something came out this week, last week. Yeah. So hopefully that will be, hopefully that's something that will just be covered across the board. And it was, what that proposal was changing the definition of infertility. Because for myself, I, clearly needed a third party. I needed assistance. For you, you were undergoing cancer treatments. Neither one of us were deemed infertile at the time. And so it's not covered because you're, it's like you gotta wait till it's too late. And then,
Exactly.
so the work that you're doing with the Alliance and, is amazing for people who need it. And hopefully that will, trickle out to all the states, for stuff like that. But I love your story. I think it's so powerful, and, now has led you to help other people who are on that path. And, and then also, how to navigate insurance for your clients too, which is, no one wants to do that or knows how to do that.
No one wants to do that. No, I have looked at, I don't even know how many insurance packages by now. And so it's really interesting because some insurance packages are straight up, absolutely not. And then others have wording that you need to get clarification, and you may have to get clarification from one or two or three people, because they actually don't know how to deal with it. And the wording is so convoluted, that they want you to say, oh, it's covered. And then you go through it and then it's actually not covered. And they're like, oh, well, you should have gotten that clarified. So it's definitely interesting, and definitely something I tell everybody: check your insurance. And especially if you work for, employers today who are now doing fertility benefits, to definitely look into that, because sometimes, and Genevieve, I'm sure you've heard this before, the employer is doing an amazing job of offering fertility benefits, which is such a huge step in the right direction. But unfortunately, like you were saying, in the sense of the term of definition of infertility,
Yeah.
right? Unless you are a heterosexual couple trying to fall pregnant, you won't necessarily be covered by that
Yeah.
insurance policy. So I always tell people that if your employer covers it, double check what that insurance says. And if it doesn't cover, don't just assume that it does, especially if you're not in a heterosexual, whether you're a single woman, whether you're gay, whether you're lesbian, whether you're any part of the LGBTQ like spectrum. It really, it doesn't matter. You have to check.
Yeah.
And then if it's not covered, fight with your employer and go to HR and tell them, like, this is unfair, like, and I'm happy to help with that. So, but it's really important to know exactly where you stand in terms of that.
Right. Right. It's, yeah, I remember reading our policies and contacting over and over and over. And it was, unfortunately for us, not, IVF wasn't covered. We actually did have IUI coverage, which was nice, but ultimately needed, 2 rounds of IVF, and that wasn't covered. But definitely a perk to, to have a lawyer who can read your insurance policies,
Yes.
and all of that definitely convoluted language that is so counterintuitive, and I feel like the sections that contradict themselves, and you don't know what you're reading. So definitely a nice benefit to have. Um, yeah, well, is there anything else you want to add to, your story and your journey? And
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I always see from intended parents is just how incredibly overwhelming and how incredibly stressful this entire fertility process is. And you when they when intended parents start this journey, um, they really don't know the specifics of what they should be looking for. So, for example, even signing a retainer agreement with an agency, get a lawyer to look over that, because there are certain things that agencies should 100% have in their retainer agreement. But if you do not know what those are, you could easily be taken advantage of. And one of the things I really, really strive for is to make sure that anybody who comes through me is not taken advantage of, whether it's a really high compensation that's just like so ludicrous that it's like, where on earth did they get this number, right? Or wow, they won $10,000 for a C-section fee. Like, that's crazy, right? Like, I know what the average prices should be, but when you as an intended parent come in, you're so overwhelmed and you're so stressed, and there's so much information coming at you, and it's just,
yeah,
it can be so incredibly stressful. And so I really, one of the things I strive for in my law firm is to guide you and to walk with you step by step. And I am not the type of attorney that just is like, I'm going to draft your contract, that's all I want. Everything else that's out of my control is out of my control. I don't think that's fair to my clients. So, I always stress that to my clients: come to me for anything, and I will guide you in the direct direction. Even if I don't have the answer, I will find it. But
yeah, I
yeah,
love it. Yeah, because like you think
yeah,
that, like when I think about like surrogacy, you're like, okay, I'm gonna have a contract with my gestational carrier, like that, and that's what I need. But you don't think, it's kind of like you think to go to the agency first, get your agency, have them match you, and then go to the lawyers. But it's like, no, like let's back it up. Let's from the
mhm,
very beginning, making sure that again you're protected from day one. We've talked, and the surrogacy industry it's not regulated. It's not
right,
regulated, and people unfortunately are taken advantage of because it is such an emotional process that people can kind of prey off of that. And so, your lawyer is there to be on your team and to support
mhm,
you and to help guide you, and just to make sure that they're kind of the level-headed ones in the process that, obviously you have some emotional
Yeah,
involvement, but also can take a step back and say, okay, like, let's make sure that you're covered here. So I love that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, like every industry, there are some agencies that are incredible, and there are some agencies that I wouldn't go near with a 10-foot pole. And unfortunately, sometimes those agencies really have a lot of things that lure parents in, and parents don't know any better until they begin. And that is when, you know, the drama really can begin. And we just try and avoid that by working with the top agencies, whether it's egg donation, whether it's surrogacy, whether it's, even getting the surrogate the correct insurance, like all those
Mm.
parts of it have to be with the best. Otherwise, you're it may be cheaper, but in the long run, it's going to be a lot more expensive when you work with,
Yeah.
the wrong type of
Yeah. I
people.
was talking to an agency. I was talking to a surrogacy agency the other day, and I was saying, a lot of intended parents go the independent route to find a surrogate just because agency fees can add up. And she's like,
Mhm.
absolutely. And also, we've seen so much where it's not done correctly and properly that it ends up costing you so much more money because the contract wasn't drafted the right way, or something happened that then costed more, or the insurance wasn't taken care of properly because the agency handles, or your attorney handles all of that. So like things kind of get, the balls get dropped. So
Right.
people think like, okay, well, where can I cut costs? And if I can cut an attorney cost up front, like great. But
Right. Sure.
it can come back
But
to kind of bite you, right?
oh, absolutely. I mean, you're, I'm sure, well aware that there are stories where people are like, oh, we'll just get one lawyer for both of us, or no lawyer, right? Because we can find a template online and use that. And well, there's a lot of parts to that. And a court, you have to do the pre-birth order, the post-birth order, or there's step parent adoption, or, there's a million different routes that you have to go. And if you don't know it,
Yeah.
you're going to think that that one contract is going to give you the rights of the child. And then the surrogate comes along and can say, actually, we're in a state that doesn't allow surrogacy, or, and you're
Yeah.
like, wait, what are you talking about? And we want to avoid that at all costs, because you will have to go to court to fight that. And that is where the money, like, it's not worth it. It's crazy.
Right.
So we try and avoid that at all costs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're here to protect you. Here to protect you, make it easy, take some of the
Exactly.
stress off of your plate, because no one knows the intricacies. I mean, like, it's crazy that like these surrogacy contracts are like 60 pages. Like, they can be like
Yep.
big documents. So want to just make sure that you have like
Yeah.
really good team, really, really good people in your
Yeah.
team. So
Exactly, exactly.
anywho's,
That's why you are so incredible as well, because
oh,
you are
thank you.
putting together such an amazing team of trustworthy professionals, which is, so grateful for somebody to do that in this industry. So,
Thank you. Thank you. Well,
yeah.
it's good to have transparency, and especially in the gay and queer community, just that people who know what they're talking about when it comes to the needs that we have, because it's different. And, so,
Mhm.
well, thank you for your work and for sharing your
Absolutely.
story and your journey. And yeah, we really appreciate it.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Bye.